Um, I'm not sure how you've done it in the past in terms of having people ask questions during the session or how you want to do it, but I'm quite flexible. So if anyone of you wanna, you know, grab the microphone, ask a question, or feel free. Don't think that you're interrupting. Let's keep it low key and informal and have some good discussions. So my plan is to speak for maybe 15 to 20 minutes about my sort of career path and choices and that led to the position I am in now, and then leave ample of room for discussions and Q&A. I think that's going to be the most interesting part, hopefully. Okay, so I entitled this presentation "My Story in Asia" because I'm sort of I want to recap a little bit of what I've been doing. So I made this timeline, and just to recap a little bit my travel. So I lived in Asia 5 years, and really after I finished my bachelor degree in finance in 2012. Wow, that's a long time ago now. Starting to get old. I'm 31, so I was around 22 when I finished off my bachelor. Finance, it was a pretty straightforward degree. I think it was very similar to many of the finance courses at GSIS, actually. So after that, I was quite eager to push the boundaries, do something else. So I decided to move to China, to a city called Harbin. So it's in the north, a little bit north of Beijing, and I just had to, share a slide about my takeaways from being a language student in Harbin because it was rough, to be honest with you. I didn't know anything about this city. It was very far north, so I saw these pretty glossy pictures, and then I came to my dorm, and I was like, wow, this is the setup. My roommate sleeping on the other side, and ice cold. So, um, but it was a period of extreme transition. And I'm mentioning this because I think everything is connected. When you look back on your choices, the things you've done in life and your work experiences or whatever, it sort of all ties together somehow. And I think Harbin was very important for me. So, very far out of your comfort zone. And I'm saying breaking the Chinese code. The Chinese code, what's that? So I think that's gotten different meanings after Trump was elected president. But figuring out uh, who are the Chinese. What's their culture? It's a huge country, so they have obviously a lot of subcultures there. And I was part in the northern region, which is very different from the southern region, but it was very meaningful. It was a very meaningful experience, and really a lot of diversity and multiculturalism in and outside the classroom. My class was, half of them were Russian, the other half were Koreans, even some North Koreans attending the school there. So it was this very interesting mix of people, which I had had very little exposure to in the past. Didn't speak a word of Chinese when I landed in Harbin, and they didn't really speak too much English over there either. So, but it was very meaningful. Okay, so let's continue on this track. So, okay, in a little bit later, I became an intern at the Norwegian embassy in Beijing. So I worked in the economics department, got some feel of diplomacy. I was curious if I want to pursue that track, to become a diplomat. Um, I think I landed. It wasn't really for me. I felt it was maybe a little bit too slow. A lot of meetings, a lot of processes. You have these courses on international relations, and yeah, things were taking time, I felt. But still, you learn a lot. So you become very good at mingling when you're in this kind of position. You have to a lot of events, a lot of things. You attend dinners, etc. So you become a lot more polished after an experience here at 6 months. Think that I was yeah, I would say you become a lot more polished at least. And you interact with a lot of different countries. How do they talk together? What sort of the jargon they're using? I wrote a lot of reports being sent back to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Norway. So you become good at writing professional, to the point kind of reports, I would say. And you learn the day-to-day work of an embassy. So I was reporting to a diplomat, of course, and figure out, well, so this is their life, this is what they're doing, this is what they're concerned with, their priorities in work and in private life. They bring their family as well. So it was a very good experience to sort of get the gist of that line of work. Um, okay, so after that, I then um, have you seen this logo before? Study in Korea, run by Korean government. Yeah, right. I'd never seen it before, and I was like, "What is this?" And turns out it's the KGSP program, Korean Government Scholarship Program. And so I applied while in Beijing, and I was granted this scholarship, um, which included a 3-year, fully covered program, extremely generous, paid for by the Korean government, i.e., Korean taxpayers. So very grateful for that experience and the wish they had to connect with more countries globally. Basically, that's why the Korean government are doing this. They want to have think of it as ambassadors globally that are familiar with Korean language, Korean culture, and have a connection to Korea. So very grateful for that experience, and it entitled one more year at language school. So I did 1 year Mandarin, 12 months, and now I was going to do a year of Korean in Chuncheon, and back to the dormitory. It's a practical joke, but seriously, that is the picture of my dormitory. And I was 25, 26, and had this bunk bed. My Chinese roommate, I think he was 19, 18. He stayed in the top bunk, and I remember the day he knocked on the door, and he was like, he didn't speak any English, and he didn't know I spoke Mandarin, so he was gesturing his hands and such, and I freaked him out. I didn't speak Chinese to him until later, and then never seen a guy so happy in his life when he realized I spoke Chinese. Um, anyway, so after 1 year at language school there, boom, Yonsei started. The highlight of my academic career by far. Not just saying that because we're in that context now. I think being at Yonsei was just fantastic experience in terms of the diversity in the courses. You're very much free to pursue any kind of academic interest you may have. It's very open. So we become generalists, right? And we sort of try to specialize. So, but I still think of myself as a generalist. Okay, anyway, so I did the ITFM course, but I did all the political economy courses. Um, I also did a lot of international relation courses and a few finance courses. But I really loved, the intersection between politics and economics. I thought that was super interesting, especially focusing on Japan and Korea and China, Northeast Asia, basically. I think international relations, the current dean, what's his name again? I can't remember his name, but I guess he taught international relations at that time too. Anyways, so I've set up this dotted line here because I think this was sort of a break in my path up until this point, and I'm sure you are familiar with this brand or this powerhouse within luxury um, departments. So I started working for LV basically in 2016. This is the building, this is the store I was working in, which is a freestanding flagship store. And it's been renovated, so it's the Maison, that's what they call it. I think they also won some awards actually with the design. And so it's retail. Louis Vuitton, they're within the luxury field, but they sell goods. So it's within the retail sector. I was a regular worker, i.e., I worked every weekend, Saturday and Sunday, and I studied in the weekdays. And I did that for a year and a half. So I didn't really have days off. So you sort of have to find time to take time off, I guess. And they treated me as a regular worker, meaning I was treated like a local, like a Korean. And working in retail in Korea, that can be tough. retail, even in Norway, that's challenging. You're on your feet the whole day, and in Korea, with the service level and 손님이 왕이다, all of those kind of things, right? So I definitely felt the pressure of managing Korean and Chinese clients as well. But it was very, very, very helpful. Didn't speak very much English, mostly Korean and Chinese, and a lot on the job training. But really, I couldn't have learned more about the language or the culture, but from that experience. So I feel I learned Korean and I learned about Korean culture, all that thanks to my experience at LV. And I think I love the product as well, but I wasn't really a luxury junkie before entering into this role, but it opened up some doors for me. So another powerhouse, LVMH, and so I worked at LV a year and a half. And then during that second, I guess it was the final semester at Yonsei, the then CEO of LV, he was a customer. He was a customer, of course, he was the 회장님, right? And he then became 회장님 of LVMH Korea. And he asked me to come on board and do an internship for him. I was, at the time I was working at LV, the only European, I guess the only non-Korean, maybe apart from a couple of Chinese employees at Lotte downtown, Lotte Punjom, typically had a couple of Chinese colleagues, but apart from that, no other foreigners. So it was easy to stand out, and I think I was noticed somehow. So he invited me to do an internship for him as well. So I did the LV in the weekdays. In the weekends. I studied in the weekdays, and then on top I did this, approximately 14-hour internship for the 회장님 at the same time. Intense the last 6 months at Yonsei, but very rewarding somehow. So it's all about connections, right? So this is the informal connections you make, which is important in any society, I would say, but especially in the Korean context, China, Japan, very much the same. And so that led to another opportunity to go work for this company, Sephora, which is owned by LVMH as well, right? So they own Dior, Fendi, a lot of these brands, including Sephora. And you have Sephora in Korea now, but you didn't when I was working in Sephora. And I was working on the go-to-market project of opening up the Korean market. So I was actually researching the locations that now a lot of, where you have a lot of Sephora stores. What is it now? I think you have one in Lotte, Young Plaza, I guess. Yeah, scattered around town. And Sephora is fun. It's about beauty, right? And I work at L'Oreal, so within the same domain. And I was working in the Singapore hub at the time. So LVMH, that was sort of in Korea. And then I was initially gonna actually continue working in Seoul, but something came up and I was sent to Singapore. So I was working in the APAC hub, Asia Pacific region, on this new market. Interesting, learning a lot there. Sephora is very much like a startup, somehow in Asia. It's very well established, but it's growing so fast. So they're breaking boundaries, very innovative the way the things they do. Anyway, so at one point I decided to go back to Norway. I had 5 good years in Asia, but it was starting to take a toll. I was getting a little bit fatigued, and my mother fell ill at one point. So I went back to take care of her and to sort of land a little bit. I'd been abroad for a long time, and time was good to go back. So I worked a year at Samsung in the Samsung Jeonja, right, electronics department, and which is the crown jewel of the Samsung conglomerate, just like LV is the crown jewel within the LVMH portfolio. I think that phone and tablets division at Samsung it's very important for them. It's where a lot of their revenue comes from. So it was interesting. I was thinking, okay, a Korean company, can I use my Korean skills, my cultural understanding, and yeah, yes and no. Locally, there were no Koreans there, so I was really disappointed. But I later realized, because I went back and forth to the Nordic hub, which is in Stockholm, Sweden. And there you have all the Koreans, and I realized, okay, the work atmosphere there is a lot different. It's a lot more Koreanized. And I'm saying that, what does that mean? It's a lot more pressure, isn't it? And it is somehow, it's a bit more hierarchical. Let's be honest about that. You know, that's the way it is, and that's okay. Culture is different, and but it was nice, nevertheless, to have that understanding. So I knew, sort of, dealing with colleagues in the Nordic hub and Koreans as well. I knew where they were coming from, so I knew their background. I knew, sort of, maybe they're not saying it explicitly what they would like you to do, or what they're, advising you. So sometimes you have to read between the lines, and that wasn't an issue for me at all. So, and I think it was a good experience as well. Mm, but it was within a very different domain from what I actually wanted to do. I'm more into beauty, luxury, these kind of aspirational things. Um, I mean, phones is also can be aspirational, I guess. But there came up a possibility to work for L'Oreal. So L'Oreal is a French company. LVMH is a French company. LV, Sephora, they're all French companies, apart from Samsung, of course. Um, so I knew a little bit about the French context prior to coming into L'Oreal, and maybe you've noticed that by now, but I've predominantly worked in large corporations. Um, Samsung has 380,000 people globally. L'Oreal has 90,000 or so. Not sure LVMH, if you combine everything, probably a lot more than 90,000. And so large corporations, and they differ from smaller startups, for example, smaller family-based companies. It's a different kind of machinery. Um, it's a big structure. Samsung, L'Oreal, LVMH, they have very set structures, which is pretty ingrained in the company's ways of working, procedures, levels you need to go through. Definitely a lot of politics. That's not the same as politics within what we're studying at Yonsei, but corporate politics, and you need to learn and to maneuver and understand that as well, especially if you're eager to accelerate and build a career within that kind of domain. Um, and you've probably also noticed that all these companies, they're commercially focused companies, i.e., they produce and sell goods to end consumers. Samsung obviously also do a lot of things for the industrial market, but I've worked within the consumer space. So they're commercial organizations and eager to make a profit. So everything we do within the company, in the end, is to create shareholder value, because they're all publicly listed companies. I mean, Sephora is not, but LVMH is. So, so I'm just saying that because that differs a lot from pursuing a different field, for example, being a professor or research or stuff like that, with diplomacy for that sake. This is within a commercial context. So I am a Nordic key account manager. Key account manager, what's that? So I manage a key account. So I manage a large client. That's basically what we're talking about. So I'm Nordic. That means my client is in different countries, but I have the overall responsibility, excuse me, for that client. Thank you. Excuse me. So responsible for full P&L of the client. P&L, profit and loss, meaning, again, a commercial term, meaning you're managing the sales, the costs, the promo, everything you do with the client. I am sort of the project manager for my client. Think of it like that. Have large teams within marketing. L'Oreal is very much a marketing-based company. L'Oreal, because you're worth it. That slogan, that's where they're coming from. That's how it's been built. But I am in the commercial side within that organization. Go-to-market plans. So could lean a little bit on my experience from Sephora, um, Samsung as well, because they launch phones all the time, you know, always a new flagship. And how do we launch it? How do we launch it in the market? How do we make sure it's going to be a success? Um, we don't want another that Note 6 experience. I think there was Note 6, and that was when I was in Yonsei actually. Terrible, but it wasn't even Samsung's direct fault, you know, it was a vendor. Anyways, different story. Not gonna go into that, but anyways, you have to be mindful of those kind of things. Um, I could go on and go on actually, but I think I'm gonna leave it with this, and so I'm opening up for Q&As, and I saw some of the questions that was shared with me previously, and we can jump onto those. Like typically, did you find any language barrier in your workplace, or some of the key skills needed in the field of work that you're in right now? But so I have all these questions in front of me, but maybe you guys want to just shoot me a question up front. Um, Up to you guys, whatever you feel comfortable with, whatever you want to do.
Can I ask a question?
Absolutely.
So I'm also a KGSP student,
Okay,
and
good for you.
yeah, thank you. So the rules say that we cannot really work during the semester. So I was wondering, how did you manage to work throughout the time of studying at Yonsei University? Because I think you mentioned you worked at that time.
Yeah, that's right. At that time, there was a maximum cap of 30 hours you could work. So I could work 30 hours within what was sort of that legal frame, without issues. So LV, the HR department helped me get this stamp in my passport, and managed everything administrative for me. So yeah, I could work 30 hours without an issue. There was a limit on doing full time because we're students, not supposed to work full time. But I mean, honestly, if you can work 30 hours and you're going to be a full time student, well, you add the numbers. That's more than a full time job in
That's
total.
interesting because, as far as I know, we are only allowed to work during the vacation, winter
Mm,
or like the summer break. So
okay. Well, maybe those rules have changed. Sounds like it, to be honest with you. Yeah, that
I
was a little bit. Yeah,
I
go ahead.
actually have a question.
Yeah.
Um, right now I'm working as well. I'm a trainee at the embassy, but I'm for the Mexican
Mm,
embassy here in Korea. And
okay.
I was wondering, from your experience, do you
Mm.
think that it's okay to kind of do internships in different areas, or should I try to focus on the area that I really want to keep working on for the rest of my life? What would be your suggestion?
It's a good question, because once you sort of finished your question, want to work with for the rest of your life, I was thinking, do you know already? I'm not even sure myself, right? Right? We have to experience it and see. But my advice would be to sort of go broad, maybe try different things. Coming from my own experience, right? That's what I did. I went very broad in what I did, and found that at times to be frustrating, because what's my identity? What am I gonna be? I'm a generalist. What does that mean? And you have these people who are engineers, or they're marketers, or pretty set in what they want to do. And I didn't really have that same calling. But if you really know, if you feel strongly in your heart and mind that that you know what you want to do, what gives you energy, joy, and pleasure in life, I wouldn't hinder that. I would pursue that track as well. So it's no black and white answer, but my experience of doing a lot of different things have been good. And looking back at it, it's all tied together somehow. I haven't seen that. I've been frustrated in the past and challenging to see, this year in China, what's that good for now? I don't speak Mandarin at all anymore. Or, working in an LV store experience, at Yonsei, my colleagues, they were telling me, Ah, so you're gonna be like a purse seller. You're gonna sell purses, you know. But they failed to see the point of that because that wasn't what I was doing at all. Actually, I was getting connections in Korea, getting a very immersive work experience in a Korean environment, and befriending Korean colleagues, store manager, listening in to their daily problems. What's life like for them? So if I were to, so that's like just to add context, you know, you never really know what you're gonna learn from that experience, and I think it's good to keep an open mind. And I would also maybe for people having internships, etc. I think what you're doing at the embassy, that sounds good. I did that too, right? And but others, you can go broad. Try and do something different. Don't think that you have to sit in a basement and crunch Excel tablets, you know, and be crazy, you know, work in retail like I did, work in a store. Wow, you're gonna really get the full immersive Korean experience from that. And maybe you're thinking, how's this gonna give me my job as an investment banker? Yeah, maybe it's not, but it's definitely a lot of life experience, and that's gonna be helpful later on.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay. Well,
If I can ask another question then.
yeah,
Um,
but feel free.
yeah. Did you find any difficulties changing from working like the Asian way to going back to
Mm.
the European kind of style?
Yeah, it was a opposite kind of culture shock. Uh, but I mean, the shock was biggest coming into the Korean workforce. I think that can be shocking for Koreans as well if they've done their undergraduate in the States, for example. A lot of GSIS students have been doing undergrad in the States or other places, and they come back, study at GSIS, which is a pretty, yeah, it's not completely the same as studying at a Korean university with only Korean professors and co-students. And then when you enter the workforce, wow, this is reality. So that was the thing at LV. It was very, very long hours, and you don't go before the job is done. In Norway and Europe, you know, you pick out. When it's 6 o'clock, we go home. Especially if you're working in retail, you don't do overtime. Come on. But in Korea, I was like, at one point, one day, we were working so long, and I was like, will I ever be able to go home? I was, but that was like a one-off experience. But anyways, and then going back to Norway, I was like full on, you know, I had this mentality of, yeah, let's do it, fighting, you know, hey, 수고하겠습니다, you know, all of that stuff. And that wasn't really the reality here. That's at least not my experience of it. With that being said, at L'Oreal, yeah, I work 9, 10, 11 hours each day on average. And that's more than what is the nominal workload in the Norwegian context, right? So you have to be, again, it's a little bit what you want to do. What kind of career, what kind of work company do you want to pursue? I think you have to be flexible with this, but sort of be mindful that you only have one body and you have to take care of it. But if you want to pursue a career and you know, try and make it big, you may have to lay in some extra hours. Not sure if this answers your question, but yeah, definitely a sort of opposite culture shock, I would say.
Great, thank you.
Hmm. Um, so I'm looking at these other questions. Yeah, I think I answered a lot of it. What sort of relevant jobs or experiences did you have before applying to your current position? Any language barrier in your workplace? Not now, but definitely in Korea and in China. A lot of language barriers, cultural barriers as well. That's the thing. One thing at the LV, I remember it was like 8:30, or you know, we were done at 8, and it was 8:30, and I was like, ah, I'm gonna go home now. I'm done. Come on, I'm gonna go home. So I went home. I told the team manager, And she's like in between me and team manager and the store manager. So she's like the 팀장님, and then you have the 점장님, right? And then so I told team manager, 간다. I didn't say it like that, but I left, right? I went home, and I came back the following day. This was on the Saturday, and the store manager wasn't there, but she was there on the Sunday. She took me to the side, and wow, she scolded me. I'd never gotten a real scolding in the past, ever, ever, you know. But she was like, "This is not how you." Oh, okay. How much should I say? But anyways, she said, "This is not how we do it. You know, this is not okay." And she was being very harsh. And at the time, you know, very far out of your comfort zone. Shocked. I was shocked. But then I was like, okay. So she's treating me exactly the same way as she would any other employee. And that felt good. She didn't discriminate because I was a Caucasian, European, or whatever. She just treated me like any other person. And I came to respect that a lot. And although it wasn't so pleasant at the time, we grew into having a very good work relationship and overcome those kind of barriers, learning to trust each other. But you have to be open to change. If you're set on your own personal preferences, not willing to change them, you can't work abroad, basically. You shouldn't pursue that kind of line of work. And I just want to say that being outside of your comfort zone, I've been outside of my comfort zone for years. I think a lot of foreigners living in Asia feel that at times. You're far out, and that's exhausting. Takes on your body, physically, mentally. But I would argue that growth takes place outside of your comfort zone. Honestly, that's where you have the biggest personal growth, in my experience at least. You see that happening outside of your comfort zone. So, yeah. Some of the skills needed in the field of work that you are in right now. Yeah, maybe that's an interesting one to answer for you guys. So I'm in a commercial department now. A lot of figures, you have to do some calculations, think about pricing, campaigns you want to do. A lot of Excel, I'm going to be honest. There's a lot of Excel because that's just the work tool. Basically, it's a dynamic program. You can tweak numbers, easy to use. So that's one thing. Yeah, you have to be a little bit, do some calculations, be able to do percentages, etc. But nothing rocket science. I would argue everybody can do it. But some people have a more, they're more apt for doing it. I mean, they have sort of, it's easier, it comes easier for them. Some people have to work harder. I actually had to work a lot harder on finance. I got like very bad grades in high school and then wanted to do finance, even though what was I thinking? But I got A's and B's and managed pretty okay. It's, you know, the amount of thing you put into it. But okay, so that's one thing. You have to be able to be a very good relationship builder. And I didn't really learn that in Norway. Where did I learn to be a good relationship builder? In China and Korea. Yeah, basically in China and Korea. Because it is a bit more formal in the European context, at least in Northern Europe. Southern Europe, Italy, Spain, not sure, not so familiar with your culture, but I think it differs. Latin America, I bet it differs a lot as well. Right? And North America is supposedly very straight on, but I think they're also pretty relationship focused though. I learned that there and I took that with me back to Norway and into my work now. And I think that's with success. I mean, I feel it's been going well, building up relationships and being mindful that, yeah, we're in a Nordic country. Maybe it's a bit more straightforward, but you know, people are people and people do business with people. They don't do business just based off a contract. So I think that's a very useful skill set. And maybe I would say also, you know, that fighter mentality in Korea and my impression of Koreans. My wife is Korean, and my time being in Korea, and also Chinese and maybe Japanese as well. I don't know, but they had this fighter mentality, you know, and yeah, Koreans always say this, fighting. And I thought it was so interesting in the beginning when I heard this. And but it's from LV, you know, never backing down, always like working, pushing forward. That kind of mentality is very unique. I think it's very unique. I haven't seen that elsewhere. So maybe because I haven't had exposure to too many countries, but I feel that's very unique, and that's something you can use with great success in any job. To have that push forward mentality, you come a very long way with that mentality. Mm, okay, so any other questions you want to ask me? Feel free. I don't. Yeah, I see 3 minutes left for Q&A. Okay, so we have 3 minutes left if you guys wanna ask
Maybe
something.
if I can ask a question.
Please, yeah.
So, before coming to Korea, you said you were studying in China. So, you could have
Mm.
furthered your studies in China. Why did you decide to move from China to Korea specifically?
Good question. Well, I got this KGSB scholarship, which was like, you know, too good to say no to. It's a golden ticket. Come on. But but still, yeah, why not stay in China? I think I fell in love with Korean culture when I was in Harbin, meeting Korean classmates. Their way of doing is so different from the Chinese, and some things are the same, but still very different. And I had been to China in 1998. I had been back and forth, you know, in the past, although I didn't speak in the Chinese then. I knew it a little bit, but I didn't know anything about Korean culture. So that was sort of that drew me into that sort of wish to learn more. Where are they coming from? All this bowing, they seem very polite, using two hands, saying hello to the teacher. What is all of this stuff? You know, I was very, as you may gather, I'm a pretty curious individual. I was very curious about Korean culture. What is this? What's going on here? This part of the world I knew nothing about. So I thought it was very interesting and pretty modern. It's very modern in Seoul, very fast moving. I went to visit in a vacation, I remember, and I was like, oh, shit. Oh, I'm sorry, but this is the Mecca, you know. This is, oh, so love it. Korean, love the food, the kimchi, everything, everything. So yeah, I guess that was the decision. China is also very good, but I think this KGSB scholarship definitely tipped me towards Korea, going there.